Hello to Texas and beyond. The last video I talked about the Deer Park fire, now known as the ITC disaster. And in that month of March, we had at least 3, perhaps 4 chemical fires. And that's pretty frequent, but this is not uncommon of an occurrence around here. And in this video, I want to kind of go into the details as to why these occurrences are so frequent, so common, and so just constantly damaging our neighborhoods that we live in, our homes, and our air and water. I have a few articles that I'm going to read that are pertinent to this, and they're going to go into what exactly the state of Texas does to let these chemical companies get away with violating environmental laws. And I'm just going to lay out a couple facts from the disaster that took place in Deer Park. 1,000 people sought medical treatment for nausea, headaches, their eyes burning from the chemicals in the air, and other symptoms at pop-up clinics. 1,000 ships stranded in the Gulf during closure of the ship channel. Some facts from this article: 137,000 gallons of foam were used to combat the fire. Because of this disaster, we can see why companies like ITC need more oversight from the government. They don't self-regulate. From Reuters, planned U.S. oil storage boom faces new scrutiny after tank farm fire. The blaze released toxic benzene, which led to 5 school systems with more than 108,000 students to shut for 2 days and prompted 2 cities to tell residents to stay indoors. It burned for 3 days and destroyed 11 tanks holding fuels used to make gasoline and plastics that sat along the nation's busiest petrochemical port and among 9 oil refineries. Harris County, which oversees the ITC tank farm, plans to review the investigations and may propose changes to state regulations, said the county's chief executive, Lena Hidalgo. Environmental groups said the fire and lack of notice to residents exposed Texas's weak oversight of energy and chemical storage sites. You don't say. I would like to think there will be a huge push and elected officials would do their due diligence, said Elena Kraft, Senior Director for Climate and Health at the Environmental Defense Fund. We want accountability, said Brian Paris, a spokesman for environmental group Sierra Club. ITC, which has 242 storage tanks holding about 13 million barrels of fuels, is not required to comply with county fire codes because it was built before the county adopted codes in late 2014, said Rachel Moreno, a spokeswoman for the county fire marshal. ITC adheres to fire preventative guidelines set by industry group the National Fire Prevention Association and the American Petroleum Institute, said ITC spokeswoman Alice Richardson. A temporary loss of water pressure on the first day of the blaze contributed to its spread. However, critics say the NFPA guidelines set minimum standards, and the use of advanced fire protection systems could have more quickly extinguished the fire before it spread and released millions of tons of carbon monoxide and thousands of pounds of nitrogen oxides, sulfur dioxide, and other pollutants. State and local governments need to amend the minimum requirements to hold companies like ITC more accountable for building terminals in areas where the severity of the fire is going to cause a bigger disaster, said Marcelo D'Amico, a principal at Orcas Fire and Risk Incorporated, which designs fire prevention systems for tank farms. New storage regulations would face opposition in Texas. A state lawmaker recently filed a bill that would speed air quality permit reviews for energy projects before environmental regulator Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, one of the groups now investigating ITC. Basically, the state and the companies are going to try to resist whatever new regulations anyone tries to impose on them, despite the disasters that have happened in our communities. In wake of Deer Park fire, Harris County officials lament lack of air monitors. This was another tragedy of this disaster, was that they couldn't monitor the air quality effectively enough. The benzene levels were detected 3 times, and they had about 9 monitors going. 9 monitors over this entire area. I mean, that plume was over 3 different cities between here and the port, and then it went all the way into downtown Houston. Several agencies monitor air quality in the Houston area, including the Environmental Protection Agency, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, Harris County, and companies such as ITC, mostly through handheld devices, said TCEQ Director Toby Baker. Lauren Ron, Chief Environmental Science Officer for the City of Houston, said the city has asked TCEQ for more monitors and was told it was not possible because the state agency doesn't have the money for them. 9 is absolutely not enough monitors to understand the pollution trends and sources in this area with an extremely high density of chemical facilities. Ron also expressed concerns about the rate at which local officials receive data from monitors. The TCEQ's monitoring network sends data on an hourly basis, with a delay of about 2 to 3 hours. By comparison, the city's mobile monitoring unit transmits data every 20 minutes. The instruments measure parts per billion. 180 parts per billion is the level at which benzene concentration is considered an immediate health concern. If there's a public health emergency, 2 hours is too long to wait. Those machines can be adjusted in emergencies to take 20-minute samples. An hour and 2 hours is not enough when people were breathing 190 parts per billion at 5 a.m. while they were sleeping. Baker also requested funding for a number of air quality resources. In the short term, he said, the agency could use funding for a new mobile monitoring van and updated software on its 2 operating vans. So the TCEQ is the agency, one of the agencies responsible for monitoring the air quality, and they only have about 9 of these monitors sending very infrequent, for what they're measuring, very infrequent intervals of data are being submitted and sent. That doesn't paint an accurate enough picture that we need to monitor levels in order to keep people safe, in order to keep the air quality safe, and react in due time. Why won't the state give more money to monitor the air quality more effectively? Well, it might paint a better and clearer picture of how poor the air quality is around here especially whenever a disaster like this happens, and what exactly is being released into the air. And this is where it gets political, because our politicians are the ones making the rules, the legislators making the rules for these companies that are following here. Chemical Ken Paxton shields corporations from justice. Here's where we get to the nitty-gritty. Since being sworn in as Texas Attorney General in 2015, Paxton has filed multiple lawsuits against the Environmental Protection Agency, taking the side of polluters over families and communities. Governor Greg Abbott and Paxton together have weighed in for special interests against the federal government over 50 times in many cases to kill or weaken environment protection laws. Greg Abbott helps companies hide dangerous chemicals. In 2014, in the aftermath of the deadly chemical explosion in West Texas, Greg Abbott waived the requirement of companies to disclose the storage of dangerous chemical in their facilities. When asked how citizens can find out whether their homes are in danger, Abbott said they can drive around to companies and ask. Never mind that who has the time to just go out to all these companies and ask them, hey, what do you have at your facility stored here? Even if you did go to that trouble, what responsibility do they have to give you a truthful answer? As if they have to be honest with what they're being stored there. It doesn't make any sense. There has to be a record somewhere. Somebody has to be responsible and keep a record of that. It shouldn't be on just ordinary citizens to ask these companies. Ridiculous. Abbott backed off British Petroleum. In 2010, the devastating Deepwater Horizon oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico contaminated coastal areas in Texas and 5 other states. Other states acted quickly and aggressively to recover both actual and punitive damages to repair their states and protect their citizens. Texas Attorney General Greg Abbott was passive and deferential. Abbott settled for a small payout and waived all punitive claims against BP. Just a few years earlier, Abbott took the same approach to BP after the deadly Texas City explosion. And what this shows is a pattern being established when it comes to breaking environmental protection laws. These companies that don't self-regulate are not required to even pay out large sums, appropriately large sums, for their damages, because our elected officials only seek small payouts as a slap on the wrist to these companies so that they can keep on carrying on, not self-regulating, but pretend that they are. And in turn, they give large contributions to the politicians that get elected in this state. And this is the intent. Because if you look at this, they have a history, this company, of violating environmental laws. Since 2009, they've been issued more than $65,000 in civil penalties. And get a load of this quote. "We believe that our environment is what we're handing down to our children. We make every effort to make sure we're compliant and that we're above the regulations." Total damage control. Not a single word of that is true about this company, because we see what they've been doing. The company violated the Federal Clean Water Act 9 of the last 12 quarters. Come on. The TCEQ fined ITC $18,300 in July 2017 for releasing cyanide into the San Jacinto River Basin. Come on. The amount released was more than 10 times the permitted levels. EPA documents and data show the company released more than 3 times the monthly limit for sulfide in 2016 and was over the limit for chlorine discharges in 2015. Oh, man. This company was also fined more than $14,000 for air pollution violations since 2009. ITC was fined $4,251 by the TCEQ. In 2009, state regulators fined the company $10,000 for releasing more than 6,000 pounds of 1,3-butadiene. I don't know what that is. It's probably fucking bad. Oh yeah, here's what it is. Butadiene is a carcinogen to humans and is frequently used to make rubber and plastic. So just giving you cancer all the time. And I'm sure if we had proper air quality monitoring, we would know exactly that these companies are constantly polluting our air and getting away with it because their profits are much greater than the penalties they have to pay out for polluting. And really, that's why they want lower taxes too, because that's a form of tax, right? Just we have to pay you guys these fines, these bullshit fines that are just giving you money for letting us do what we want to do. Why should we have to pay you taxes on top of that? And so this corrupt pay-to-play system is another reason why corporations feel like they don't have to pay taxes. They have a right not to pay taxes. There's other reasons too, and it's all just about their greed. The way the system works is that industries are allowed to pollute in order to cut costs and increase profits. In turn, the state and the EPA will inflict penalties in form of fines, never jail time. These people don't have to worry about jail. They can pay out as long as the profits are higher than the penalties they have to pay for violating the environmental protection laws. Fines make it look like the state is actually penalizing the polluters, but it merely serves as a bribe to the state for allowing them to pollute in the first place. These same elected officials in Texas who deregulate polluters for profit, most of them deny climate change as unsettled science. After the massive Hurricane Ike in 2008 started talking about a $15 billion concrete barrier along 60 miles of Texas coastline to protect oil refineries from storm surge. After Hurricane Harvey caused an estimated $125 billion in damages, the newly proposed barrier would cost $31 billion. Shielding the companies contributing the most to climate change from its effects with taxpayer money as they deny to your face what they know to be true based on their efforts. Tale as old as time. They lie to your face, get the industry their payday, make it harder for them to be sued or face consequences in return for political contributions, favors, and kickbacks. Total corruption. And that is the epitome of John Cornyn, our U.S. Senator from Texas, who is up for re-election in 2020. And some of you may have heard of MJ Hagar, who's trying to oppose him. But MJ Hagar does not stand for Texas. She stands for Washington, D.C. She stands for the military-industrial complex, for the national security state. She does not want to roll back our defense spending. She wants to give a blank check to the defense industry and to let them commit whatever international and war crimes that they see fit for their own efforts, and to extend imperialism, American imperialism, across the globe. And so I don't think MJ Hagar is a worthy opponent of John Cornyn. I think it's just trading a red sweater for a blue sweater. And the real opponent of John Cornyn is Sema Hernandez. Sema Hernandez. I've been mispronouncing her name. Sema Hernandez is running against John Cornyn. She ran against Ted Cruz in 2018. She ran against Beto O'Rourke in the primary in 2018. And with a budget of less than $5,000 against a budget of Beto's about $4.5 million, she still got 24% of that vote. With no media attention, no name recognition, just hard work and grassroots support. She is fighting for Texas values, for the Texas issues, the issues that are going to help people of Texas. She is for Medicare for all, tuition-free college, immigration reform, voting rights, expanding voting rights, supporting equal rights for everyone, women's rights and LGBTQ rights, supporting justice nominees who will uphold Roe v. Wade, criminal justice reform, sustainable infrastructure. Houston is flooding every year. We just went through a flood. My dad just lost his car in a thunderstorm flood. It wasn't a hurricane or something crazy. Just a little storm coming over us and just flooded the streets. And here's the kicker: environmental justice. Environmental threats are a consequence of developed nations. Our nation recognized this early in the 20th century as manufacturing increased the production of waste and harmful byproducts. Industry lobbyists resisted efforts to protect our communities and our air, land, and waters. Finally, Congress passed the National Environmental Policy Act of 1969, which resulted in the EPA. Industry efforts to escape environmental regulations have contributed to a perilous condition that now threatens life around the world. We must hold the fossil fuel industry accountable for the damage they have already caused and demand investment in alternative energy sources. In a country as large and wealthy as the United States, we have to change the way we build our communities and minimize the impact our decisions have on our environment. Our countries already have achieved this, and yet the energy industry insists that our people and our economy are incapable of change. This is insulting. We have technology and the ability to make the transition to renewable energy and build sustainable infrastructure to achieve energy independence and withstand the effects of global warming while creating jobs in the public sector. Legalizing marijuana, fair trade deals. All of these issues affect Texans. Ask MJ Hagar where she stands on any issue. You're not going to get a straight answer. Look at her interview with the Texas Tribune. It's on YouTube or a podcast. She's all about meticulously crafting her image and promoting her image against John Cornyn, and that's how she wants to get your vote. Don't buy it. It's a trick. She will do nothing to fundamentally change anything for Texans in the Senate. She will vote to expand the U.S. military budget and probably deregulate Wall Street. All of the things that Texans and most Americans really don't want any more of. But that's the corruption in the system that we're trying to fight against, which is why Sema Hernandez deserves your vote, deserves your support. And you can look at her page and donate to her if you like. And just read up about her on the issues, her positions. They're very, very thorough and very good. Sema 2020.